Well, I'm honored. It's a privilege to introduce the speaker today, and we're in for a real treat. Like I said, I'm super excited. We're going to do it a little bit different today. I'm going to introduce our esteemed guest, and I'm going to kick us off. He's going to give us a brief history, kind of a chronological history. Then I'm going to kick it off with 2 or 3 questions, and we're going to try to make it more interactive today, where you guys can participate and ask our guest.
Yeah, do you want to ask questions there, or you want to sit down?
Well, I just said that.
Okay.
Whatever y'all prefer, I don't mind. So, we have my glasses so I don't miss anything here. Okay, I think all you know who our guest is. It's our own Sam Balloff. And Sam, quite candidly, is my staff's favorite customer. They love to see it when Sam comes by the office. Sam was born in 1923 in La Follette, Tennessee. He graduated from Macaulay High School in 1941. From there, he enrolled in Vanderbilt University in 1941. And then in 1943, he enlisted in the Army. He served from 43 to 1946. He served in the 78th Infantry in World War II. After the war, in 46, he went back to Vanderbilt University, where he received a BS in Math and Business. He graduated in 1948 from Vanderbilt. And then in 1948, he went to work in the family business in La Follette, Tennessee. And then from 1955 to 1991, he and his brother owned and operated retail clothing stores in Oak Ridge and Knoxville. Mr. Sam Balloff.
Well, actually, you've taken some of the stuff out of my.
Oh, sorry.
I'll be better sitting down.
There you go.
Well, guys,
Use that microphone.
John asked me to
Use that microphone.
Can you hear? Yeah.
Oh, well.
All right. So I'm not used to this. So anyhow, I want to tell you some things about my life, and if you have, maybe it'll open it up, and you can ask some questions.
Hold that to your mic. Hey, Sam, hold that microphone right
Okay.
here. Yeah, a little closer.
Like Sinatra. There you go.
Hold it close.
Talking about Sinatra, well, that's a different story. I want to tell you some things about my family and about my life, and if I hope it'll open it up for some questions. Okay, my father came to America. He was born in the Ukraine, Russia, in 1891. Came to America in 1909. He was 18 years old. I'm sure there were many agencies at the port that welcomed people. The immigrants. My father's brother had been in this country for a couple of years. Met him at the port, and there were just so many people there to welcome the immigrants. I mean, from all over the place. So during my mother was born in New York, 1895, and during the flu epidemic in 1914, she and her family moved to Pineville, Kentucky, to live with some cousins. That was the flu epidemic. In 1918, my parents got married. They moved to La Follette, and they opened a clothing store with the help from a wholesale company in Cincinnati, and that became the name of our first store. It was called the Cincinnati Bargain Store. That was in 1918. In 1923, I was born in La Follette, above the Woodson grocery store. My parents had an apartment up there. In 1924, they bought a house next to the Catholic Church. And that kind of brings up some stories, because we were the only Jewish family in La Follette, and we're living next to the Catholic Church. And that there's many stories with the priest and And then in 1929, of course, there was the Depression, and things were really pretty hard in 1929. And as I think back, I think the only money that really circulated came from the coal mines or from the tobacco industry, and there was some dairy farming. I really not much, I didn't know about farming, the farmers up the valley. Anyhow, in 1933, things began to change in this part of Tennessee. They started building North Dam, and of course under Roosevelt, there were many projects. I have some pictures of a camp that was in Norris, and you might want to look them over. Anyhow, during the Roosevelt early years, I mean, the CCC program and TVA and all its program and rural electrification, most of the people that worked in our store had electricity that if they lived in Follett, but if you lived in the country, there was no electricity until about 1937. In the late 30s, they built a shirt factory in Follett. They took over an abandoned tobacco warehouse and built a shirt factory. And I guess that was a big thing in La Follette, because it was the first time that women, other than the professional ladies, had a chance to earn some money. Over the years, I think we had about 1,100 women and people working in the shirt factories in La Follette. Made a lot of shirts for JCPenney. And then in the late 30s, seemed like things got better. 1938, I went to McCauley in Chattanooga. 1941, I started Vanderbilt. In 1943, I joined the Army. I was in the 78th Infantry Division, and we spent a lot of time on the border between Belgium and Germany, and there was this, of course, there was the Battle of the Bulge. But there's so much about World War II that I don't remember. I ended up, well, I had a lot of different jobs when I was in the service. When I enlisted, there was a training program, and I was told that if you sign up on this program and go to a training, you'll get a commission and you can finish your college. That was in December of 42. January of 43, I went into the Army. Everything kind of fell apart. Anyhow, there's not a lot I can tell you about World War II because I don't have good memories. I had a lot of different jobs, but I was so blessed that I got through it, and I ended up being a truck driver, which is another story because I had never ridden in a truck. Anyhow, I was discharged in 1946, and I went back to Vanderbilt, and I graduated in 1948. My brother graduated from the law school at Vanderbilt in 1948, and I graduated. And we went back to La Follette and got into the family business. My mother and my dad were very active in the business. And so Ed and I went into the business, which we did in 1948. And then some other things that happened. 1958, there was the Clinton High School bombing and the development of the McAdoo, the Green McAdoo Museum in Clinton, which is really a story about the bombing and the integration of the Clinton High School. In 1970, there were a group of Vanderbilt students who came to the mountains of Campbell County. Medical students, nursing students, engineering students came up and had health fairs, and and I got very much involved in that. Having graduated from Vanderbilt, and there was a lady, Marie Cirillo, I don't know if you guys know that, she's a nurse that lived up in that part of Campbell County. In the late 50s, I passed over this, I got active in the Boy Scouts, the Boy Scout program. I was the treasurer of the Cumberland Council, Boy Scout Council, had headquarters in Middlesburg, Kentucky. But I had some good years with the Boy Scout program. And then in the meantime, my brother and I are still operating some stores. But anyhow, in 2004, John became the coach of the Bearden golf team. And he needed some help. I'm not much of a golfer, but we needed some help. And I got with John, and I think for about 10, 12 years, we worked with the Bearden golf team, which was really, I met a lot of great people, a lot of great parents. So from 1948 to 1991, my brother and I opened up some men's clothing stores in Oak Ridge and Knoxville. And that's about as much as I could. I've written down, if you have any questions, I love to talk. I'm not a good speaker, but I love to talk. And I tell you guys, if you want to hear some stories, I live in Ethan's Glen, and every afternoon, Dudley and 2 or 3 of us, 4 of us get together and we talk about nothing for 30 minutes. So if you want to hear some stories or tell some stories, come on over to Ethan's Glen about 4 o'clock on a pretty day, and you'll hear some great stories. One thing I know Margaret's here, and I want to tell you, the women in those early years were either from they were nurse, they were teachers, and those were pretty much the good job. But I want you to know that Margaret, I don't know this, but she taught the nursing school at St. Mary's for like 20 years or more. So that was a great job in those years for women to become nurses and teachers. But until we opened the shirt factories, the women from the mining camps and the farms was the first time that they really had jobs, and even though they didn't pay a lot, they were jobs. So that's kind of a quick review. I'd like to answer some questions if you've got some.
Okay, Sam, quick question. You talk about the immigration of your father. What was his reason? Was he fleeing Russia? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes. Well, he really didn't talk about it a lot, but his brother had come to America 2 years earlier, and he sponsored my dad. And he came from a family of 11 children, and I don't know, things were very bad over there then, and they wanted to get out of Russia, and so his brother sponsored him and brought him over here.
And do you speak Russian?
Oh goodness, I can't even repeat the name of my dad on the ship listing of the passengers. My dad was listed as Ezra Balloff. That was their Russian name, Balloff. And of course his brother had to change the name to Balloff. So that's how. But I'm sure there were other agencies on the ports that brought these immigrants in, and it's quite a story.
Okay, last question, and we're going to turn it over to the floor. You alluded to this in your talk about being I didn't realize you were the only Jewish family
Yes.
in La Follette, Tennessee, of all places. I can't imagine. So, what was that like? Did you ever, as a young boy, get picked on for? Was it ever an issue?
You know, I never had an issue, never. The fact, I think, that we lived next to the Catholic Church, people really didn't know why we were Jewish. I tell you, I bring up the Catholic Church because that was so many stories. I don't know if you want to hear a story too, but well, there was a priest that did a circuit tour around. I think on Sunday morning he'd come to La Follette, and I think he went to Norris. No, Norris wasn't there then. He went to Rockwood and maybe Oneida, and he would come to La Follette for Mass, but he would alter the schedule. Some days he would start in Rockwood, some days he would start in La Follette. So over the years, my mother and father became very friendly with the Catholic, with the priest. He was just such a great guy, and they got along so good together. So anyhow, in those early years, we had a lot of tourists coming through La Follette. You know, La Follette was on the main road between Cincinnati and Atlanta. So we had a lot of people coming, and there were a lot of Catholics. So they'd stop in La Follette for the evening, and they had asked Mr. Turney, you know, is there a Catholic church here in La Follette? Yeah. You know what time they have Mass? He said, well, I'll have to call Miss Balloff, because she knew what time he was going to be in La Follette. And also, over the years, my mother, of course, they got to be friendly with the priest. They added a room to our house, a back room, and they put an air conditioner in the window, and so the priest was telling my mother about the Sundays in the summer when they would have school at the Catholic Church, and so they had added a air conditioner to the room, and they worked out a deal where the Catholic kids came over to that back room for their Sunday school during the summer. So you can imagine the only Jewish family so involved with the Catholic. But getting back to the early days, we never, never did I hear anything bad about our being Jewish. I got to tell you, my parents belonged to a congregation here in Knoxville, and of course I had no Jewish education. They had their services and most of their schools they still do on Saturday morning, but Saturday morning we worked in the store. I mean, Saturday was the big day in La Follette, and people came from all over. Things are good, and so what can I tell you? I kind of grew up in the Presbyterian church because my friend Dick Sharp and Ben Rogers belonged to that church, and I went to the Presbyterian church about as much as I was. What else can I tell you? I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Clinton bombing when they integrated the schools. I think the Clinton people accepted those 12 black students who came from a black high school, but there was a guy that came in and kind of got people riled up, and ended up that they bombed the school. So I don't know.
I think Sam has a question.
Hey, Sam Balloff, you told me a little bit of this story, but I wonder if you expand to these folks. During World War II, towards the end of '44, the Allies had made a ride to the Rhine River, which is the border into Germany.
Yeah.
And Hitler, understandably, had blown every bridge. except one outside on the town of Remagen, which is also the source of, many a war movie on this famous bridge that did not get blown, and one Sam Balloff was there. Could you tell us
Yeah.
what your experience there at the
Well,
Remagen Bridge, the
well,
Ludendorff?
There were two really big events that our division was involved in, and the Battle of the Bulge was one of them. We were just north of the Battle of the Bulge. I think our infantry was involved in it, but I told you I was a truck driver, and I was delivering food and clothing and anything else, and I never knew what was going on. But we missed I was there during that area, but I didn't know what was going on. But anyhow, the Remagen Bridge, there were 26 bridges across the Rhine River. And as the Germans retreated, they destroyed 25 of those 26 bridges. And they tried to blow that one up. I think the explosive went off. The bridge kind of raised, but then it settled down. And for 10 days, the Allied forces went across that bridge with tanks and infantry and anything they could get across. I was, like I say, I was a truck driver, and I drove across the bridge. There's a tunnel at the end of the bridge, and went through the tunnel, and then came back across the river on a pontoon bridge. And there's a story about the engineers who built these pontoon bridges under fire. And I don't know how many engineers we lost building those bridges, but they were under continuous fire from the Germans, but they put the bridge together. So we went across the bridge and then came back across the pontoon bridge. So the bridge fell in after 10 days, and the Germans were beginning, they were beginning to really weaken, and we moved across the Ruhr Valley, and I ended up in Kassel, Germany, and that's another story. Okay. Is there anything? Yeah.
What year did you open your stores in Knoxville?
1963, when they built the Valley Fidelity Bank building. They, I think that was 1963, and somewhere in there. And we were supposed to get my brother and I were supposed to get a location on the corner of Clinch and Market, but I think a couple of banks merged, and they wanted that space, so they gave us a little space on Clinch Avenue, and we had that store there for 18 years. Yeah.
Did you have a store at the West Town Mall also?
We opened a store in West Town Mall in 1972 when they built it, and that was another project because they had a hard time getting that mall, the West Town Mall, put together, but we ended up, a guy out of New York finished the deal, and they built the West Town Mall, and we had a store there until what year? We always had an 18-year lease, so 18 years after that we closed. We had to move out because our rents, of course, after 20 years, the rents had grown, and they wanted us out. They wanted change. They wanted national change because they could borrow money on those leases. So we closed that store in I don't remember.
1990.
But we were in Oak Ridge for 20 years, from 1955 to 1975.
All right, question back here.
Sam, with a man of over 8 decades of experience, what would you say to a younger generation about adversity as an entrepreneur and just as individuals? How would you speak to them about adversity and overcoming that?
as a younger generation
Yeah.
coming up, how would you speak to them about determination, adversity, facing adversity?
Well, I don't know what to say. I do have a son, David, who I thought would be interested in the retail business. As my son Mark and David grew older, my dream was that each one would have a store. My son Mark I thought would operate the West Town store, and when they opened the East Town Mall, I thought David would manage that store, but David was not interested in retailing. He was selling ice cream and doing volunteer work with the Bush family, but you know, I don't know. I don't know what to say other than I don't know. There's a lot of problems out there. That's a question I haven't thought about. Give me some time to think about it, okay? I gotta tell you about my brother, Ed. I don't know, a lot of you guys didn't know Ed because he never really left La Follette. But he got involved with Ray Mears and the Tennessee basketball program. And when Ernie Grunfeld was being recruited, Ray Mears asked, of course, Ernie was Jewish, so Ray Mears asked Ed to go up to New York and visit with he and his family who had just come from Poland. And Ed did, and I think he, and of course, Ray brought Bernard King and Ernie down to Knoxville, and Ed was very much involved with Tennessee basketball.
Interesting.
That's cool.
I've got something on my mind. I love the song "God Bless America." It was written by a Jewish person. It tells a story about Jewish people, about any immigrant, be they Irish or Italian or whatever. But I love that song, and I love when Haynes Smith sang that. And you know, I'd sit at the front table, and I thought I had a pretty good voice, and I'd sit at the table there, hoping that maybe someday they would ask me to lead the song "God Bless America," and I got passed over. I think I had a pretty good voice. I never got to lead "God Bless America" because it is a story about be Jewish or any immigrant. That "God Bless America" is just it's my mother and father lived that. So what else?
Was it Irving Berlin that wrote it?
Irving Berlin wrote it, and it just tells a story about immigrants who come and how much they love America. And can I tell you one? Of course, I'm telling you, my parents never left, but there's 3 stories I want to tell you. My father had this store in downtown La Follette, and one day this young boy, I don't know how old he was at the time, but he didn't have any shoes, and he walked by the store, and my dad noticed that he didn't have any shoes on. He asked him if he had any shoes, and he didn't. So he brought him in the store, and he gave him some socks and shoes and whatever he needed. And he just was that kind of dad. He was that kind of person. My dad loved to help people. So time goes on. The war in 1960, a guy by the name of Roy Asbury, who was an attorney in Jacksboro, wrote a letter to my dad in 1960 and said, you know, I've known you all my life, and I want to let you know that during the war, I got a truck, and I went to a depot, and I got as much food as I could get, and I took them to an orphanage that the Catholics had developed for young people who were left over from World War II. So he went to this depot, and he got all this equipment that he could, and he took it to he took it to the orphanage, and he tells a story about the priest who tried to thank him. He couldn't understand the German language. But anyhow, he writes this letter to my dad saying, this is the way I can repay for what you did for me. So that's the story about my dad. My
So
mother,
he's the person that received the shoes, this
Roy
gentleman?
Asbury.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know that, if any of you attorneys know anybody, attorneys out in Lafayette, you gotta know the Asbury family because they're very prominent in the law. And then my mother and Miss Carden, our neighbor, got to act, most of the coal miners in Lafayette lived in a certain section of Lafayette, and went in the children of those families went to the same school that I went to. So we got to know I got to know a lot of younger people from that group, and so I told my mother some of the problems. So she and Miss Carden would make a big pot of soup and take it over to the school for lunch for these people who really did not have a lot. And they did all kinds of charity work. And then my brother, I was doing some fundraising for Vanderbilt. He said, Sam, they got enough money. Let's do something for Campbell County. So he did a little survey, and he found out that a lot of the teachers in the Campbell County school came from Cumberland College in Williamsburg, Kentucky. So Ed and I started raising money for Cumberland College, and we did a pretty good job. And Ed was given an honorary degree from Cumberland College because of the fundraising that he did, and that's his story, my family.
Wow.
Hey, Don, this circular that I brought is a copy of a circular from 1933. When we would have a promotion, we'd print these circulars and take them to the mining camps. You can pass it around, give you some idea about the prices of clothing in 1933. That's another story.
Sam, thank you very much. Sam has brought some pictures up here too on the table, so before you scoot out, please take a look at that. But I get a chance every once in a while to ride around with Sam. Nobody loves Campbell County more than Sam Balloff and his family. So, and he tells stories the whole way up and down. They're fantastic. I could sit here and tell you 3 or 4 more real quick, but I won't.
You do more than that. Last week, where I worked at Home Depot, somebody took the same Balloff out there to buy some appliances.
Well, yeah, we were looking for washers and dryers. So
President John.
That's fine. That's fine. I first met Sam when Bob Ely, out of this group, used to be grandfathered into LeConte, and after every 4th of July, the Thursday after 4th of July, he had, I think, 2 or 3 cabins up there. Todd, you remember this, you and Becky and your family.
He had 19 places.
19 places, and they were hard to get. And so Bob, for the club, and so we would sign up and we would go up there. And when I first got back into Rotary, I walked up there and I'm sitting on the front porch, and Sam Balloff sitting right next to me. He was 78 years old, and that's a hard hike. And so we just got up there and had the best time. And Sam, you're a treasure in this club, an absolute treasure. And in your honor, of course, we donate something to Pond Gap Elementary School, their library, in your name. And I've got a book. Actually, Rosa, do we have a book?
Right there.
We do. All right. And Rosa likes to kind of match the book's title with the program, and so we'll see how she did today. This is by Disney, and it's called Descendants 3. Descendants 3. So anyway, yep, that's right. You've got 3 kids.
Right.
And so, Sam, if you'll sign this, we'll put this in Pond Gap.
Thank you.
So Ashley, thanks for moderating this.
Don't
Great
forget the little
idea.
gift.
What's that? Oh yeah.
Little gift.
Yeah, we've got a little gift, a little post-it note for Rotary. So please take that with you. But I'll get you to sign this. And Ashley, thank you for the great idea. This was great. We're gonna wrap up real quick. Guest, please come back and see us. Dudley, thank you for being here again. We miss you. We don't do humor anymore because it's kind of daredevil stuff. And I tell you, we wouldn't ask you to do it anyway. You're on that edge. Anyway, we miss you, Dudley. And so, and everybody else, Abbott, thank you for coming. Come again. Rogers, always, you're welcome, please, and bring your young friend with you. We'd love to have him come again, 105 years old. Hugh, thank you for coming. Thank you, sir. And Ashley, your son. And if I missed anybody else, please come back. Please come back. Next week our program is Mark Wyndham, horticulture, gardening, why all the roses in Knoxville are dying. Oh, my mom? Yeah! Thank you, Gordon. That would have been a tough one this weekend. So come next week about listen about the roses. And our last thing, please bring a visitor. This is a great place, great things going on. Thank you for being here. With that, let's see. Dudley, can you do the four-way test? Do you still remember? You've got Smokey there.
No, I don't.
It's over here, Dudley.
Jim, please.